Well, what are we fixing today? Today we're going to look at 6 things that I would not have tried to do in my first 6 months of doing Home Assistant. Maybe even some of these I've just tried recently. I'm into my second year. Some of these things are cool to have. Some of them might not interest you at all. I don't know. But I found them all interesting, so I thought maybe you would. So, how about we take a look at what they are? The first one we'll look at is Visual Studio Code or Code Server. Here, as you can see, this editor is way more awesome than like just the file editor or some text editors you see. And if it's typed in wrong or if there's a syntax error, it'll highlight it. This is all done by the magic of, I can't say the guy's name, but there's a Home Assistant extension for Code Server, and that's well maintained. It makes it makes it harder to make mistakes. You can make mistakes, no doubt, but it usually tells you, oh, you got to have that ain't right. I don't know what's wrong, but that ain't right. Also, when you do things like icons, it brings up the icon explorer, so it'll put them right in the thing for you. So that's kind of cool. Lots of good stuff happens here. The other thing that this gives you is the great ability to share your code with everybody else. Now, I have up in GitHub, the whole Home Assistant installation is up there, minus secrets, minus a few files. If you look on the side here, I think you can see the ones that are dimmed. Those are the things that I'm not sharing with you, especially not secrets. I do not want to open that, and I don't even want the cursor to hang over it very long because I have a lot of secrets in there. That stuff is not shared up to GitHub. However, everything that's in the bright here is. My GetIgnore file starts out by ignoring everything. The first thing that you should do in a GetIgnore file that's tracking something that is fluid all the time and you're sharing live, ignore everything. So anything new that you do does not end up out on GitHub and then it's out there forever because it goes into backups and it gets very, very, very hard to delete. You have to wipe the whole repository and start over. So you don't want to do that. But after that, after you ignore everything, they say, oh, well, my automations 2 file, I want to share that. So, exception is that exclamation point, and then the folder, that, and everything that's under it. So, again, look at mine. You can see what's going on. I ignore all, and then I add in all this other stuff. Now, getting this set up is not too bad. Home Assistant has a whole article on how to do sharing. Very good information, very helpful. But where I learned how to do this is Bearded Tinker, my friend and also another YouTuber, has made 2 excellent videos on how to do this. Those links are below. I suggest them highly. HA Quickbar Command Palette. So the HA Quickbar Command Palette is something that's very, very handy if you're going in and you're editing YAML, because you can use this to reload certain integrations like scripts, reload inputs, helpers, automations, reload quite a few things. So instead of having to restart your Home Assistant every time you do a little edit and you want to see if it's going to be accepted and see if it's going to work, you can just go in there and do the reload. Let's go look. Here's my Lovelace. This is just a panel. And in order to see, take the cursor and click somewhere not inside of a live panel. Basically, you are selecting the Lovelace screen. So you come over here. See, if I go here, I get a finger, right? I don't want the finger. I want it to where it's not a finger, where it's just an arrow. Click there. Nothing will happen. You're just selecting that area. And then type on the keyboard, add the letter C as in cat. Boom. Here is your command palette. And if I want to reload automations, I say AU automations and reload automations. And then you click this, and you'll get the little circle for a minute, and then automations will be reloaded, and then you can go look and see if there's an error down here. Right? Very simple, very nice. Now, if you want to see find an entity for some reason, I'm already selected, but if you just came in cold, you'd come in, you would click here, but I don't need to click. I can just type E at this point, and I can bring up all the entities. And there's more. There's more to it. If you go into the VSCode add-on that we just talked about that you should have, I'm going to pop in there. Just give me something here. There. I like that screen better. Get on to some of my automations. If you go into the VS Code add-on, you can access those from here as well. Let me show you. You look on your keyboard, function 1, F1 key, click that. Boom. Reload. And here's all the things you can reload. Well, let's say I want to reload groups. So let's reload groups. Boom. If you hit F1 again, you'll notice that all of a sudden groups is up there. So if you're in the middle of like reloading scripts, or fixing a script, and you want to like reload and reload and reload, you just say F1, bang, hit it, reload the scripts, thing shows up down here, and it's all set. Replace your default config with the things that you use, instead of just a generic. If you have a new installation of Home Assistant, you'll notice, well, let's go look. You'll notice that up somewhere in your config.sys is a entry called default config. Now this is handy for new people because you don't know what you need at that point. But once you kind of figure out the things you need and you decide you want to do things like clean up your configuration and split things and add things, you're going to need the access to all the things that are kind of like in the default category. So if you have the default config, I suggest doing this. Hide that and add them all manually. And why you want to add them manually is, if, as you can see, normally it would just be automations and then nothing. But I split my automation into two folders and another file. All my actual YAML code none of it is located in this file, because this file is big enough and messy enough without any YAML code in it at all. This include is basically a pointer to a new file, and it's when it's include dir merge or merge named or merge list. Those are going to folders of files. If you add all of these in, it's okay to remove the ones that you don't think you're using, like energy. I don't use energy. If you didn't use cloud, for instance, you could comment out cloud if you don't have Namakasa, right? So you can then kind of control what you see and what you don't. And the stuff that you don't need, so just get rid of it. But if you don't add things in here like input boolean, input datetime, those commands, those things are going to act differently in Home Assistant than you're used to. So you need to start with everything. And if you know for sure something you're not using, you can comment it out. If you don't know what it is, probably best to just leave it in there. Then below, I put all my other stuff that I've added later, things that I've added and they're not part of the default. So I put those in a separate alphabetical list down here. Highly recommended. Split up your configuration, including the scripts.yaml file. If you have a lot of YAML code in your system, I'm a bit OCD, but it makes a lot of sense in my mind to break it up into a nest, a spider web, or whatever, something that makes sense to your mind so that you can find it when you want it. Splitting the automations and the scripts and all these other files up it goes a long way to getting it organized to where you understand it. Now, Splitting the automations file and splitting the scripts file is a little tricky because they both have to work with the internal Lovelace user interface editor. The user interface editor does weird things with the file, so it needs the file to be local. Here, you can see how I have my stuff split up. This is my Home Assistant config. All my shared files is up here for you to see. And you can see I have, as far as things that are split, I have a directory of templates, switches, sensors, scripts. Those are all split up files, binary sensors, and automations. And if you pick one of these, this is a list of a bunch of my automations, and I have them further split in files by kind of like what they do or where they are. Also, there is a Home Assistant article on splitting up your configuration. That can be found here, and I'll give you the link to all this stuff. Don't worry about that. So if you go into my configuration, into my README file, I have some information in here that will help you a lot. There's a link to that webpage I just showed you. There's a whole video from Doc and Frank, our friends and fellow streamers, Dr. Z's and Frank from Nabokasa. They did a video a while back on splitting your configuration, which is very, very helpful. It goes through how to do the automations.yaml split and the special trick you can do there. And since then, I have found that this is one way that you can separate your scripts.yaml file, which also has to be different because of the UI editor. In my case here, I create a link, and I use the link to make sure it's shared and make sure that the UI editor works. So you can use this, and there are other ways to do this, but it does have to be handled special because of the UI editor. However, once it's split, you can make some sense of it and kind of do some organization, and it does help a lot. Custom iframes and custom panels, or custom panel, iframe, whatever. The latest version as of this video of Home Assistant 2021-12, I noticed that my supervisor tab on the left side disappeared. If you look at mine, I still have a supervisor tab. You're going, I don't have mine anymore. What happened to it? Well, I brought it back. If you take a look over here, there is a custom, not a custom, there is a integration called Panel Custom. Go through your menus and pick anything that you want to see in the menus. And then you look up in the URL bar up on the top, and you will find the URL for that. You can copy this one for the supervisor tab, and then you can go in there and play with the settings of the URL path. You could pop up into any, so if you always want to pop up into, for instance, into supervisor and your host logs, you bring that up on the screen, you look up on the top, in the URL bar up on the top, and figure out where it is, and then you put that stuff in here. And then you can just have on the bar on the side here, say host log, and boom, and it'll show up. In my case, supervisor. So if adding this gives me the supervisor, and when I pop the supervisor, it brings me up my add-ons. Now an iframe is different. An iframe is external URL, where the custom panel is an internal to Lovelace URL. So this is a internal to my house URL, something that my daughter uses to move her hospital bed. She's otherwise abled. And she uses this, if I push this button right now, then her head will go up, so I'm not going to do that. And let's look at that panel iframe. That one is even simpler because there's no JavaScript or other stuff involved. It's just give it a name, give it an icon, and give it the URL of wherever you're going, anywhere in the world that this can access. Number 6, mount a drive. Now this one is probably the most advanced of any of them. This one is definitely dangerous. You can absolutely break your system doing this. And this is also one that this method I'm showing here works for supervised mode with Debian as your base so that you can get to the root file system. I don't know how to do this on HAOS. I'm sure there's probably a way, but I don't know what it is. For supervised mode, this is how you map a drive into Home Assistant. And why would you want to do that? Well, for instance, if you want to use the Plex add-on needs direct access to the media files in order to share them. Right? If you can't, you want to raw load all those things into your Home Assistant? I mean, you can, but most likely you have some kind of an external drive. In my case, I have a couple of USB drives with stuff on it. So what this does is maps those USB drives so that Home Assistant can see them in the supervised mode. Let's look at how I did it. This is kind of the path how I did it. Now, since this is messing with operating system files in Linux, you really need to know what you're doing. The supervisor is not helping you here, and you're going into a file structure that if you change anything, you're going to break your Home Assistant instance. So do a backup before you do this. Do a snapshot/backup. Make sure you have a clean backup of exactly what you have, because there's a good chance you could break something. So I'm just warning you. So you plug in the drive into your system so that it spins up, and then you get the UUID of the drive, and the UUID is like the magic number that identifies the drive as the drive in the system. It should be unique. Sudo block ID, and you look through there and you find the one that is your drive. You're going to need that number for here. You need to add an empty folder in your media folder. You can do this from the terminal. You can do this from the SSH add-on. There's a bunch of ways you can do it. In this case, we're going to do media/music. Then you need to go into the file system, and as root, you need to edit the /etc/f tab, fs tab, the file system tab. And then you put in this string, and basically this is mapping. This will be unique to you, right? And this will be unique to you. But the rest of this should be the same for any drive. It's basically find this device, map it to this location using NTFS file system, and it's all this other stuff will help it work correctly. And don't test it at boot up. All right. You add this in there, and then you reboot the computer. That drive should show up there. You should be able to see it in the Home Assistant. The things that broke my system when I did this the first time is the first time I did a backup, I did not do a partial backup. You need to do a partial backup and ignore the media folder, because when you add 3.5 terabytes of data, and the backup system tries to back it up onto a 400 gigabyte drive, it fills up the file system and nothing boots and nothing works. So you have to do a partial backup from then on and ignore the /media file. This gives you the ability to add the Plex add-on, and Plex can read it, and Plex can map it all out for you. You could use the Samba add-on and share it out to other places that need it raw. So that all works. It's just the trick is get this map right, get the mount correct, and do a partial backup from then on of your Home Assistant so that it doesn't fill up your file system. So let's go look at where I have these mapped. Here, go under Media Browser. Inside of Media, I have the music one, which I showed you as my sample map. And there's a movies one. Let's look at the movies. There's about 3 terabytes of movies in here. Let's go back to music and go under music, country and big and rich, and you can play a song. So, or you can get a hold of these with automations. Nice, right? They're all in your media file. So, what do you guys think? That's my video for today. Some tricks and tips I picked up along the ways in my couple years doing this stuff. I'm no expert, but, I've been at it a while, so I know some tricks. Thought I'd pass some of them along. Thought maybe you'd like it. If you do, give me a like, subscribe. Those are all great things for me. I could use subscribers. If you have any questions beyond this, I didn't go into any detail. I can go into more detail in another video, or I can go into more detail with you directly on Discord. So if you'd like some help, give me a ring on Discord. Other than that, for today, that's it. Till next time, bye.